that. And yep, okay, the recording has started. Okay, morning all. Thank you very much for attending. I see we've got 47 plus in the meeting, so that's excellent. Thank you. Happy Cyber Scotland Week, all of you. For those of you who've been engaging in our series of activities so far, I hope you found them interesting and enjoyable. Some of you may have managed to swing past the marquee that my colleagues Frank and Elaine were manning in Buchanan Street on Monday. It's more of a public-facing event, but it was certainly open for staff as well. And we've had a number of the online events, including the Inter-Authority Cyber Challenge that we participated in yesterday. Sad to say, we didn't win, so it was clearly a fix. But congratulations to our NHS colleagues who were the winners. And congratulations also to the pupils who submitted entries for our cyber-themed poetry competition. We'll hopefully be doing a wee press announcement on that one shortly as well. So in terms of today's session, we are very fortunate to have a guest speaker today, Jordan Schroeder. Jordan is going to be presenting on a day in the life of someone who does everything right. And we all wonder who that is, because it's surely not me. Some of you may have seen Jordan. He very kindly also did the guest talk for us last year. Jordan is a world-leading cybersecurity and resilience expert. He's got over 15 years leadership experience across sectors. Before the meeting, he was also telling us about some of the weird and wonderful things he's done out with cybersecurity. Let's just say it must make for an interesting resume. But he's led cybersecurity, cyber risk, cyber resiliency and data privacy programs in the US, Canada and the UK. Everything from tech startups, governments, public sector organizations, academia and Fortune 100 companies. He's currently the managing CISO, which is the Chief Information Security Officer at Barrier Networks, and he's building a team to make governance, risk and compliance a perfect missing piece to an organization's security puzzle. So no more from me. And I think I completely forgot to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kenny, I'm Council's Head of Information and Data Protection Officer. But enough about me and over to Jordan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kenny. When I was speaking to the team, I was pitching the title and the idea of a day in the life of someone who does everything right. And I knew that when I needed to present it, that something would go horribly wrong on the day of the presentation. And true enough, that is exactly what's happened today. So I would like to say that this presentation is a day in the life of someone who does everything right in security, because I can assure you everything I've done has been secure. So please bear with me and extend a little bit of grace for me while I do try to catch up and deal with the technical difficulties that I've had this morning. So thank you, and I'm very glad and very honored to be invited back again to speak to you all on cybersecurity on Cyber Scotland Week, and to help guide you and to help give you an idea about how you can secure yourselves, your work, your council, your personal lives in cybersecurity. And I wanted to show you an idea about what it is like for someone who does absolutely everything right in security, where they wake up in the morning and everything but everything that they do is secure. Ooh, I'm getting a lot of things here. All right. So, a day in the life of someone who does everything right. I wake up in the morning. I turn on my router because it was off. I've turned it off the night before. And I hit the little button in the back that resets it to the factory defaults. It resets all the passwords. It resets all the settings. It turns everything back to an unconfigured state. I then turn on my computer. And of course, I can't connect to the network or Wi-Fi because the router's just been turned off and all the settings are off. I then run a full antivirus scan of my computer. I then go make breakfast. By the time I'm done breakfast and doing the dishes, the scan is done, and I then connect the computer back to the network on the router in the Wi-Fi. I reset all of my passwords on all of my online accounts and work accounts. And by then, it's lunchtime. And I open Outlook and I start reading my emails. I scan each email that I read first with an anti-phishing tool. And I can read about 6 emails an hour. My browser only lets me visit 14 pre-approved websites, without images, of course. And at the end of the day, I turn off my computer, I turn off my router, and I unplug my computer and all my electronic equipment. And I am still curious about what this Facebook thing is that everyone keeps talking about when I'm riding on the bus. This is not, what I've described is not beyond the range of possibility. If you were a spy in a hostile country, you might in fact do every one of the things that I had said, and likely a lot more. But for an average person, for an average worker, for someone's going through their normal digital day, that, what I've described, is beyond overkill and beyond unnecessary. What we need to be able to do in our digital lives is strike a balance between protection and security and being able to get things done, because that balance is what's necessary. We can't let security block us and prevent us from actually working and doing what we need to do. I am a longtime cybersecurity expert. The picture on the screen of the child, I came across this image online, and I actually had to do a double take to make sure it wasn't me, because absolutely everything in this photograph could definitely have been, would have been in my home, and I wore that watch. That's the first generation calculator watch, by the way. I recognize it. This isn't me, but it gives you an idea. I've been working with computers, and I've been hacking computers since the mid-'80s. I'm also the author of a couple books on how to help people secure themselves in their work and in their daily lives. And even then, even with all of this background and all of this experience, I don't do everything right. I make mistakes. I do things that are potentially a little risky for various reasons. And so I want to talk to you today. I want to give you some encouragement today about how you can overcome these struggles that you run into and these challenges that you run into to be secure while you're working and going through your daily digital life. Security and doing everything right is not about never veering off the path of the straight and narrow. Security and doing everything right is about constantly adjusting to stay on the path. Because no matter what you do, you're always going to start veering off of the perfect straight and narrow. And it's all about getting back to that baseline, which is important. Now, the image on the screen is I love this image, and I use this image a lot in my talks. And you may have seen this from me before. I'm Canadian, and I actually come from a part in Canada where winter isn't winter until it hits minus 40 degrees. And if you're wondering if that's minus 40 Fahrenheit or Celsius, it doesn't matter, because they're actually that's where those two scales meet. And the concept of driving in minus 40 in typical winter weather is described here in this image. You can't see. Your tires may never actually reach pavement. You may be driving for hours on ice and snow, and you have lots of other people driving at the same time. And a good driver in this environment, in this type of extreme environment, isn't the driver who can do all the right things, who knows all the rules and follows all the rules perfectly and can pass a driving test. That's not a good driver in this environment. In this environment, a good driver is someone who can adjust to the constant state of slippage. You are constantly and always heading for the ditch in this environment. A good driver is someone who can just simply stay on the road and stay safe, because going straight is very rarely possible. So when we're talking about cybersecurity, what are we talking about what are the things that can pull us off the path? What are the things that can result in us going way off the line and ending up in an insecure environment? First, we can create our own digital blizzard. We can create our own digital extreme driving experience. We, especially in an era now, or in the past couple of years, where we are in a hybrid working environment or working from home, we create our own distractions. I have some logos up here in the screen of a variety of different social media networks and work tools. And what can happen is that while we're working and while we're doing things, we're then switching our context. We're working on emails, and now suddenly, oops, we're off now responding to a text, or oops, we're off responding to this alert on our phone, or oops, we're off responding to this this notification, this, there, and the other place. And then we try to come back to work. In an extreme driving experience, when driving at -40, if you can imagine, if you're constantly working to keep the car on the road because you're in a constant state of slippage, imagine the kid in the back throwing their toy and hitting you in the head. Right? Imagine the hazard that is because you are now distracted. Imagine the person next to you suddenly wants to launch into a very serious emotional conversation, right? This is a massive distraction that, while in a normal environment, you may be able to handle that. In this environment, that distraction means that you cannot detect the tiny little signals, the small little things in your environment, which mean that you're heading off the path. In a digital blizzard, the same thing can happen. You can miss all of the tiny little details which you might have normally seen because you've been distracted with other things, you're changing context, you've got so many other things happening around you. And you might be aware of the Take 5 program. Now, Take 5 is a UK initiative that looks to empower people with that when dealing with a text message or a voicemail or an email, when dealing with this unsolicited external communications, that you take just 5 seconds, right? Take 5 seconds to think about it, to analyze it, to understand what you're seeing. And those 5 seconds can be enough for you to notice those tiny little details to see whether or not that makes sense. Is this a phishing attack? Am I actually talking to who I think I'm talking to? Is this right, or not? And studies have shown for years that those 5 seconds can make the difference between a good decision for what to do with that communication and a bad decision. The other thing that can go wrong, the other thing that can pull you off the path is simply the complexity of technology itself. And technology is getting more complex every single day. Now, as you remember from previously, I've been working in technology for a very long time. And I have been up to date with technology for all that time as well. And I enjoy delving into the next new thing in technology. And even I have problems trying to keep up with everything I need to do to stay secure in the environment. But what I do is I make sure that I'm listening, I make sure I'm asking questions, I make sure I'm constantly learning to make sure that, not that I'm just adopting every new thing that comes down the line, but that the things that I need to do my work, I'm doing securely, and I'm making sure that I'm doing the right things with those things. The other thing that can happen is just life. Now, I love this next story that I'm going to tell you, and I also tell this story quite often because I think it highlights the fact that just because someone does something wrong doesn't mean that they failed. So one of the things that I was working with one of the companies that I worked with, and there was a large phishing campaign that was going around to everywhere. It was called the RGB button phishing email, and it had a variety of different guises. The thing was, it was an email with a button, and then if you clicked it, it just compromised your email account, and attackers took over your entire email account. And I had done presentations with the board and the executives of this one particular organization. I'd done special communications, and I'd worked with them for a long time doing education and awareness, and did all this. And then one day I get a call from the chief financial officer. And the CFO says, I have something to tell you. I'm like, okay, what have you got to tell me? He says, you know that RGB button thing you kept telling me about? So I clicked one. And I got to admit, the first thing that went through my head as a security person, as their CISO, as their chief information security officer, as the person who had just spent an incredible amount of time educating them and making them aware, the first thing that went through my mind was, you've got to be kidding me. But the next thought I had, which was very soon after, was, okay, tell me the story. What happened? And the CFO told me this. He says he was working with a vendor, one of their normal suppliers, someone they knew well, someone they had a multi-year relationship with. And he'd been working with them. And on the phone call that they had with them, he asked for more material from the vendor. And the vendor said, no problem, I'll send you an email with that information. Normal, typical, happens all day with the CFO. Absolutely nothing out of the ordinary with that. Everything was going right. 20 minutes later, he receives an email from that person, from that account, and it was legitimate and actually that account. And it was like the thing I have up on the screen. A very simple message with a click here to view the message. And the CFO clicked the link. Of course, the CFO clicked the link. And as the CFO was explaining to this, I said, I'd click it too. There's nothing in that situation that would make me think, oh, this is not something that was wrong, because it's from that account. Everything was right. All the indications were that it was right. And he clicked it. And as soon as he clicked it, he realized something was wrong because it wasn't acting properly. And then he calls me and the security team, and we dealt with it. So even though we might be aware, even though we might have all the information and all the tools and everything we need to do things right, sometimes situations can be just lined up. The stars can align and things can go wrong. And sometimes, like in this situation, I've been in technology and security for a very, very long time, measured in decades. I'm a chief information security officer. I wrote the awareness material on how to avoid this very thing. And I tell you, I would have clicked that link. The other thing that can go wrong is the fact that the attackers that we're dealing with are extremely well trained, they're extremely well resourced, they're well funded, they have a lot of practice, and it's their job. They spend all day, every day, trying to learn how to attack. And sometimes they're better than we are. And as much as we can do, as much as we can prepare ourselves, sometimes they're just better. And that's not our fault. The other thing that can go wrong is just life. Sometimes uncertainty can sneak up on you. Sometimes bad things just happen, and we need to be able to adjust. So the question then is, what do we do? How do we handle this? How do we stay, how do we stay on the path, but how do we keep staying on the path? And what I have up here on the screen is the Alcoholics Anonymous prayer. It's rather famous. It says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. When it comes to technology and the tools that you use for work and at home, when it comes to some of these things that you have to deal with, some of them are outside of your control. Some of them you can't affect, you can't prevent, right? There are a lot of things you can. There are a lot of things that you can do, you can learn, you can adapt to, you can figure out in order to be secure. And sometimes you need to be able to figure out what the difference is, what you do have control over and what you don't, and be able to move forward and keep bringing yourself back to that center line and to that safe, narrow path. It's not about staying, it's not about not veering off that path, but it's about this constant daily act of constantly going back to that center line. So what can you do? What are the actionable things that you can do which bring things back to that center line and make sure that you are doing things right daily? The three things that I'll give, and they're really basic and they're really high level. One, especially if you're working from home, separate your tasks. If you're reading emails, read emails, right? If you're responding to people, respond to people. If you're in a meeting, be in a meeting. Try to separate your tasks so you're not constantly switching contexts. There is a lot of corporate policies out there that say that if you're doing work, do work, right? Stay in the work context. Don't do personal things. Don't be answering things on your phone, responding to text or something on your phone. Wait till a break to do that. Now, a lot of people think that that's because of abuse of employer time. And that's not that's partially true, but that's not entirely true. From a security standpoint, it means that your head is in the game. Your head is focused on the work context and the things that you need to notice to make sure that you're working securely. The second thing, ask questions. As a security professional, it is my belief that people don't ask enough questions. I think because they're scared of being considered or seen as stupid. But ask questions, even the stupid ones. Make sure you're asking them of your coworkers, of your security team, of your DPO, of the people that might help you, of other security experts. Ask questions, learn, get ahead of things, make sure that you know what to adjust and how to adjust. I ask questions all the time, right? And I'm not afraid to seem stupid because there's a lot of things I don't know, but then I know them once I ask the question. And then there's that empowers me and equips me to move forward. The third thing that I'd recommend for you to look at is all the workarounds that you use to do your job. And you know what I'm talking about. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. There are policies and controls and tools that are put in place to help you be secure. And some of them are annoying. Some of them prevent you from doing your job. And so you come up with workarounds so that you are more efficient and you do your job. The workarounds are not there so that you do a bad job or so that you're purposefully insecure. You're trying to do your job. And I get that. I totally understand that. But sometimes those workarounds can be too risky. Sometimes there might be more secure and better workarounds. For your workarounds, be very, very mindful about what you're doing and let someone know. Let your line manager know, let the security team know, let the DPO know. Let people know about what you're having to do your job, right? It's part of that asking those question things, but it's more about telling and making people aware because sometimes there might be a better alternative that might be more secure. The other things, and you'll probably be hearing this a lot during Cyber Scotland Week, is some very, very, very basic things. One, make sure you're updating all your operating systems, your Windows, your Apple phones, your Mac, your Android phones. Update all of these things when there's an update that's available. All your software, your browsers, your Chrome, your Edge, your Firefox, whatever it is. All your software, they come out with these security updates, and they're really, really, really important. Make sure you're not delaying. Make sure you're updating them when they come out. Sometimes you're in the middle of a meeting, you're in the middle of using the tool, and that's not a good time. But during a lunchtime break, something, end of the day, make sure you're updating. The other thing, MFA, also known as multi-factor authentication. If you do not know what this is, if this is a phrase which is brand new to you, I encourage you to please talk to your security people about this. If you do know what I'm talking about, it is about the little code that's on your phone. So when you log into something, you then have to type in a little code that's from your phone. This protects your accounts in a really, really, really effective way. It is the closest thing to a silver bullet we've got right now to protect accounts. Make sure you turn on multi-factor authentication on everything. Your work accounts, personal accounts, game accounts, if they have it, turn it on. Some of them might not require it. That doesn't matter. Hunt through, turn it on. It is the best way to secure yourself online right now. And the other thing, I've mentioned this already, the phones. Your phone is a little computer. You need to treat it just like it's a work laptop or a desktop. It has the same power and the same risks. So make sure it's up to date and make sure you're using it securely. And that can sometimes be difficult, and sometimes we forget that. So in conclusion, I just want to encourage you and say that doing things right daily means nudging yourself back to right daily. It's not about how far you move off or how far you drift, right? It's about recognizing the fact that you're in a constant state of drift. You're always veering off that path, and it's about nudging yourself back on the line. And over time, looking backwards, you can see that you've forged this path and it works, and you are secure over time. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. It isn't. It simply is not going to be. And that's okay. It's all about what you need to do to get back to center. And that's the most important thing. So I've tried to keep the conversation as high level as possible. I've tried to provide a lot of actionable things that you can do. You've probably been inundated with a lot of security tips and security knowledge this week, which is great. And I encourage you to ask questions. Constantly ask questions, because there are such things as stupid questions. I mean, people say there's no such thing as a stupid question. Of course there's stupid questions. But they stay stupid if they're not asked, right? If you ask them, you learn, you move forward, you equip yourself, you empower yourself to ask better questions moving forward, and then you just simply move forward as you need. Now, the one thing that I did have one more slide because I wanted to encourage, let's do this. Never done this before. Let's see if this works. Oh, wait. Oh. One last slide. There is more happening this week. There is an online quiz using Microsoft Forms, which quizzes your security knowledge. This is a great test to figure out what you can improve on. NCSC Top Tips Guide has also been published with a lot of some of the tips I've already provided. There is a CGI cyber escape room at St. Andrews Secondary. I love these escape rooms. You're put in a situation where you have to solve these cyber puzzles in order to accomplish your goals. They're great. I love them. And this member of Scottish Parliament, Jamie Hepburn, is also going to be arriving with some students, I believe, 7th year students at Hepburn tomorrow. And so he's also going to be speaking. Now, the question that has come in is a question about Ukraine. See if I can bring this back up. Question about Ukraine. Is the conflict in Ukraine going to cause some issues and some challenges in terms of security? The answer is absolutely yes. And it's already happened, and it's been ongoing. In a physical conflict, the first thing that happens is conflict online. So before the invasion started, for a couple weeks before the invasion started, the attacks on Ukraine and Ukrainian allies were happening on cyberspace. And while the invasion's been happening, a lot of cyber attacks have also been happening online to UK businesses and people and governments and critical national infrastructure. And so we need to, Cyber Scotland Week is perfectly timed because we need to remember that we need to do these things to protect ourselves, protect our constituents, to protect the people in our communities. Especially for a council, you need to protect everyone we serve. And we need to be able to protect ourselves in order to protect them. Looking forward with the advancement of AI, what are the challenges? I could speak for hours on that alone. Short answer is nothing more than what we're seeing now, just at a faster scale, which means we just need to keep doing the right things right over time in order to move forward. Next question from John is, we often get told that it is too clunky or time consuming, therefore MFA does not always get enabled. How do you effectively break down the business barriers to implementing MFA? Passwords used to be seen as clunky and time consuming. Now they're just run of the mill. When I have worked in large organizations and implemented MFA as a new thing, was working in universities and colleges and implementing it across the entire student population, it was seen as clunky and time consuming. It was. And it kind of is, because it's something brand new that we're introducing to the environment. Now, just to log in, I just want to log in. I just want to log in. And now I have to do this other thing and it's new and I have to figure it out. After 2 weeks, max 2 weeks. For a lot of people, it's 3 days. Max 2 weeks, it just becomes normal. You just know what to do and you just do it and you just get used to it just through that familiarity. It is a break in your normal flow. It is. And there are ways that you can implement MFA so that they're not having to enter that code so often. You can put in a lot of exceptions so that the person logging in is just sort of assumed to be them. right? Because of the machine that they're logging in from, where they're logging in, and some of these other things. So there's things you can do to make that MFA a lot easier. Thanks, John. And question from Gordon from the registration field. We keep getting the same sorts of reports about the same sorts of things, missent emails, letters in the wrong envelopes. So we've reached the point where we have we reached the point we simply have to accept that there will always be a level of this happening, or do we keep trying to improve even though we don't see any change in the frequency of incidents? This is a big question with a big answer, but there is an answer. What you'll have to take a look at, and this is very, very important, especially for line managers, for the security teams, for the data protection team. And Billy has absolutely hit the nail on the head. You need to figure out why. And it's probably not a technological thing. There is probably human factors. There are other factors that are coming in that are causing this. And we can adjust those. We can analyze those. We can take a look at those, figure out why this is happening, and then look at what we can do to reduce those incidents. But I assure you that those incidents can be reduced through a proper, looking at it through a different lens, right? And looking at it through a person lens and not necessarily a technology lens. Gordon Laird asks, what can we do as a business to assist with the human factor that causes data breaches time and time and time again? I've written books on this. This is also one of these fill an entire conference to try and answer this question, Gordon. But thanks, Billy. Billy says human factor analysis. The answer is to make it really high level, right? And to make it very actionable. Have conversations. Have conversations with people. Ask why. What from their perspective, get them to tell you why. Get the people who are doing these things, and these breaches or these incidents, get them to tell you why and what they need, instead of management or security teams telling them what they need to do. There needs to be that policy bit and that security team telling people what to do. But there comes a point where they need to tell the security teams what they need. And you need to be very open and very blame-free to be able to listen and to be able to provide what people need so that the incidents reduce. And I've said this before in previous conversations with you, Council, is that people don't go to work wanting to do a bad job. People don't go to work wanting to cause a data breach. No one does. So if it's happening, then there's got to be some other reason why it's happening. And we can go through an entire technical, deep analysis on the human factors. But to start off, it's all about a conversation. It's all about having those honest one-to-one conversations and asking and listening and keeping it completely open. And Billy says he's drunk the Kool-Aid. Thanks. Yes, it's a good Kool-Aid to drink. It's good flavor. Oh yeah. Now I'm very conscious of my time, and that we were scheduled to end a couple minutes ago, but we've got some really great questions coming in, and I'm very happy to answer any more questions, and I'll stay on the line for this. But I think, Kenny, that we can move on unless we have any other questions or any other comments to make.
Okay, I'll throw it open if there's anyone who wants to ask a face-to-face question. Now's your chance. We've got quite a lot of them in the chat, so I'm not necessarily expecting any. Can I just say, Jamie Hepburn, I should probably also point out, in addition to being an MSP, is actually the Minister for Higher Education, Further Education, Youth Employment and Training. So obviously this year we've pitched the Cyber Escape Room, and thank you to our colleagues at CGI for the use of the Cyber Escape Room this week. So we've obviously pitched it as an education awareness raising tool. There have been some staff opportunities available for it, but it's primarily been used to raise awareness amongst the children and young people in the city about cyber issues. I see we've got a hand up. Donna.
Right. Hi, folks. Just a quick thing here. I use an external system called Hanlon, and I've immediately been in contact when we got the email round about this week and the potential threat, which doesn't surprise me. And I sent it to one of the senior members of the Hanlon staff to say, please make sure you're aware of this. They have two-factor authentication, which is troublesome, to put it mildly. And I had said to them a while ago, please investigate moving to MFA. So I'm just wondering if there was maybe a better approach rather than relying on individuals in the council that are sort of nominally the contacts for different systems, that in these sorts of situations we can maybe go to them and say, please implement MFA as soon as possible and tell me when it's going to be ready. There's also sort of a secondary point with this. For years we've been told not to use our personal equipment for work, and I am fine with that. And I think it's good because it's the separation that you've been talking about, Jordan. But the 2FA and MFA codes go to my personal phone, mobile phone, because I don't have a work mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
And due to an issue with the 2FA from Hanlon, I have to actually make use of my work laptop, which I've refused to do. It's a work thing. It should be on my work laptop. And there are change requests in for this for CGI. But in this situation where, and I don't know how, you're saying that there's already been a cyber threat because of the Ukrainian situation. I don't know if CGI are able to reprioritize maybe the.
So I can answer a lot of this. Communicating and putting some pressure on the people who run the systems in order to provide a type of MFA that means that you are more secure in using it is a good thing. In some systems, it can be very difficult to change, to incorporate that. But being very open and very vocal and very honest about and just being a little bit persistent and working with other people, your colleagues, to tell the system owners to make these changes will have an effect. So I encourage you to do that. Now, I'm an external person. I don't have any power. I don't even know who the contacts are. But in general, simply being open, being honest, and being a little persistent and saying, no, I need something better to be secure. Right. So I would encourage that. Secondly, I've implemented multi-factor authentication in public sector, in higher and further education, and across the board. And the number one concern is about I'm using my personal, I'm putting it on my phone, and I'm using my personal device for work. And let me provide some comfort on this. You're not, actually. What you're doing, what your phone is providing, is basically a time code that's mixed in with some math. So you're not using your personal device for work, because the application that you use to come up with that code can be used for anything. It can be used for all your personal things and your work things. What it's doing, it's checking the current time, doing a little bit of math, and then presenting the 6 digits. So it's a lot like just telling the computer that you're logging into what the time says on your phone. That's basically it. So there's no connection, there's nothing there. Also, if your phone was somehow infected or compromised, or all of the Russian army was residing in your phone, it still doesn't compromise the thing that you're logging into, right? You're still okay. right? So the fact that you're still using your private phone for this, your private property for this, isn't using personal devices for work, right? It's just simply providing that time code. So this is not a problem. I've produced a video on this, explaining this and explaining some of the different options and why even using a personal device for your phone is more secure than all the other options, and how that works. And maybe I can share that video with Kenny and the team, and maybe we can socialize that. So trying to explain this because it's a very, very, very common comment and a very common concern, but it's actually okay. It is, and I'm all about separating personal stuff from work, and I'm all about that. I'm telling you, in this case, you're okay. It's all right. You're doing okay with that. Yeah, it could be good to see that video. It looks like I should just do public viewings because I get a lot of people wanting to see this video. There was another comment. Kenny, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's actually in relation to the point that Donna was raising. Yeah, at the moment, our policies say don't use personal device for work purposes. We are going to be tweaking that guidance specifically to say, however, there is no problem using your personal mobile phone for MFA purposes for exactly the reasons you've said. You know, we don't like people using personal devices for work because we don't know what the security of that device is, and that means our data might be compromised. But since this doesn't involve any data residing on the personal phone, that's fine. And certainly that is one of the approaches we're looking for. We're moving to a new social work platform called Eclipse, which will have MFA. And in the first instance, we are exploring, obviously there's some HR issues to be teased out there, but we are exploring the idea that it will be mobile phone authenticator be used for it.
Yep.
Donna had also asked about prioritising work with CGI in the back of the Ukrainian threat. I have to say we've been working extremely closely with our CGI security team in relation to this. The Scottish Government cyber resilience people have been asking lots and lots of questions in this space, and we've responded to them with positive assurances that we've done what we can do. Local Government Digital Office had a slightly more pessimistic view, which said if the Russian state actors decide to target a local authority, there's probably not a lot we can do about it other than making sure we've got backups ready to restore from. So we have backups ready to restore from if that somewhat pessimistic outlook does indeed turn out to be correct. We're not expecting to be targeted. We potentially will be peripheral damage. I think you'd mentioned yourself, there was a Maersk shipping company taken out as accidental collateral damage by a Russian attack on Ukrainian infrastructure a few years ago. So we're hoping not to be next on that one. I would say, in terms of that video, yes, I think we'll have some chats with our colleagues. Obviously, if we're moving to roll out MFA more widely across the council, something from an external impartial source like yourself that says this is nothing to worry about, I think that would be welcome. So I think we will be having that conversation and we'll share information on that.
With one university, the union was expressing a lot of concerns, and they were thinking that management was saying, well, management's just being lazy in trying to get us to use our phones, and they just don't want to do the expense or cost or some of these other things. And so I actually produced this video for that union to explain, no, this is okay. And I was a third party at that point saying, no, it's not about being lazy. It's not about trying to avoid costs. It's not that. From a security standpoint, it's okay. And there's no commingling of work and personal information or work or effort or asset use in all of this. And as soon as I produced that video, the union just said, "Oh, we get it. We finally understand what's going on." And the union then blessed that. So yeah, it's a very real concern, and I understand why the concern would exist. But I'm telling you, as a third party, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. There's no commingling, and there's no commingling of assets or data or security or work-life balance.
Yeah, and I personally would much rather be able to do it on my personal mobile phone rather than have to have the little widgets that we used to have for Windows 7 laptops. So for people on the call will remember having those things and the sheer problem it would cause if you happen to mislay it or it stopped working properly.
And the same app can be used, like I said, for everything, for your personal Facebook account, your personal Twitter account. Everything can be done on the same thing, and it can all be mixed in the same things.
Okay. Yeah, and it does save having to carry two phones around as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands up. I had one question myself from your presentation. It was in relation to the RGB button story. Our advice to staff at the moment is if you click on the link and then go oops, what have I done? Our advice is press the power button and keep the power button pressed down until the device shuts down, then contact people to say something started happening on my device. What's your view on our position on that?
There's two views on this that I would have. What you want to do is you want to cut off the network, right? You want to cut off that device from the network from being able to do its job. It can be too tricky for an average person to try and figure out, how do I turn off Wi-Fi on this? Like, most people have never had to turn off their Wi-Fi. They might not know what to do. So the simplest act is to shut off the machine, because that cuts it off from the network. Right. What you lose in that is any forensic ability to figure out, to inspect that machine, to figure out what's going on, what exactly happened, how far it went, and you lose some of that. That might be an acceptable loss in order to contain the problem. So if I'm talking to, an average worker, I might say, yeah, just turn it off. If I'm talking to a security team, I'd be saying, cut off the network, keep it on, so that you can look on that machine and figure out what's going on. So I've got two different answers there for that. For an average worker, yeah, it's probably the easiest, best thing. It's simple and it's easy to follow. Make sure the device is off, and then call.
Thank you for that. Do we have any further questions?
There's one question that came in, and yeah, I was wondering if this would come up. The difference between 2FA and MFA. 2FA is MFA, kind of. So 2FA means two factors. So that means your password, and then usually this extra code you have to put in. MFA is also that, because 2 is a multiple, right? But MFA is growing, so there's multiple different factors that you could also include. So if you've heard zero trust being used, it's a buzzword right now. If you haven't heard about it, don't worry about it. But there can be like a dozen different factors which can be part of that authentication that you might not know about. You don't have to provide anything necessarily, but it could be about what's installed on your laptop, where you are in the world, whether or not you have certain things installed in your laptop. And you've got all these different factors. And so they lump it together into MFA. So and some people want to differentiate between 2FA, which is just password and that little code on your phone, and then MFA, which is this massive group of other things that can be considered as well. But essentially, they're the same thing. For the average person, for the average worker, 2FA and MFA, basically the same thing. Those terms are starting to mutate and change, but not in a way that affects you.
Okay. Thank you. Hopefully that was helpful for our audience. Okay, if there are no further questions, all that remains for me to do is to thank Jordan for his time talking to us this morning. Thank the attendees for their attendance. We will, as I say, once we've got the closed captions sorted out, we will be publishing the video in due course, and we'll issue staff comms around that space. Normally at this point, I would ask everyone to give Jordan a round of applause, but we've admin muted their mics, which, given the feedback loop, having 60 people clapping simultaneously, would probably not be a good idea. So, but if you want to do a virtual clap, please feel free.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me back. I always enjoy presenting to you, and the questions are always great, and the conversations after are always amazing. So thank you very much, and thank you for being an engaged audience and wanting to take security seriously. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.